Lena Voss had a plan for her Tuesday. Wake up, make coffee, walk to the bakery where she worked, come home, sleep, do it again. The lottery changed that. She heard her name through the open window of the village hall. 1 second she was carrying a basket of bread rolls. The next second, 300 people were looking at her. She stood very still. The bread rolls stayed in her arms. She did not drop them. She thought about that later, that her first instinct, when her entire life changed, was to not drop the bread. The peace treaty between her village and the Blackmore Wolf Kingdom had one condition: one human woman, offered as a bride to the Alpha King. Not a slave. The council was very careful about the word they used. A bridge, they said. A symbol of unity between two peoples. Lena did not feel like a symbol. She felt like someone who had been chosen because no one was going to fight very hard to keep her. Her father signed the paper the same afternoon. Her oldest friend, Mara, hugged her at the gate and said she would write every week. She never wrote. The carriage to Blackmore took 2 days. Lena spent most of it watching the forest through the small window, trees that grew taller and darker the further north they went, until the branches overhead were so thick that the sky disappeared completely. It felt like the world was closing its mouth around her. She told herself that was a dramatic way to think about it. She thought it anyway. The palace was made of dark stone, and it was enormous. Not in the way that castle illustrations in books are enormous. Tall towers, pretty flags, that kind of enormous. This was the enormous of something that had been here a very long time and intended to stay. The walls were thick, the ceilings were high. Every corridor felt like it was holding its breath. Lena was shown to a waiting room by a woman who did not introduce herself and did not smile. She sat on a wooden chair. She folded her hands in her lap, and she waited. After a long time, a guard came and told her the king would receive her now. The throne room had 100 people in it. Wolves, though they stood and walked and dressed the same as any person. But there was something in the way they all turned to look at her, at exactly the same moment, the same slow movement of 100 heads, that reminded her she was very far from the bakery. She walked to the center of the room. She did not look at the king right away. She looked at the floor first. Black marble. A crack ran from the doorway all the way to the base of the throne, thin as a thread. She followed it with her eyes until it ended at his feet, and then she looked up. King Calum was tall and dark-haired, and he looked at her the way a person looks at weather. Not unkind, exactly, but entirely indifferent to what the weather might prefer. He had not turned to face the room when she entered, and he turned now, 4 full minutes after she walked in. She knew because she had been counting. He studied her for a long moment, then he looked away. He spoke to the room, not to her. "The bond cannot hold," he said. His voice was low and even. "A human cannot carry a wolf king's mark. To offer it would be to weaken the bloodline. The treaty stands. The girl goes home in the morning." 100 wolves in the room, and not one of them made a sound. Lena looked at her hands. They were flat in her lap, still, open. She noticed that her knuckles were not white, that she was not gripping anything, that her body had decided on its own to be very calm. She thought about every time in her life someone had decided she was not quite the right thing for the situation. Her father, choosing quiet over her. Mara, choosing comfort over the long road of keeping a friendship. The lottery, running straight to her name, like water finding the lowest point. She thought, this is just the latest one. She thought, I have excellent posture for someone who is being told she is not enough. She stood up. Understood, she said. 2 syllables, no more. She walked toward the door with her back straight and her hands at her sides. She was halfway to the corridor when she heard it, the silence of the room behind her changing, not breaking, not filling with noise, just shifting into a different kind of quiet, the kind that meant something had happened that no one yet had words for. She did not turn around. The guest room they had put her in was small and had a window that looked north. She packed her bag. It did not take long. She had not brought much, and she sat on the floor against the bed because she was very tired, and the floor felt honest in a way the bed did not. The moon rose outside the window. She watched it, because there was nothing else to do. It was a full moon, white and close, and as she watched, a second ring of light appeared around it. Not a cloud, not a trick of the glass, a ring. white and perfectly round, burning at the edges like a mark pressed into the sky. The warmth came through the window before she understood what was happening. Not heat, warmth, the kind that has weight to it, that settles on the skin like a hand resting gently on a shoulder. She put her own hand into the beam of light on the floor. It stayed. And then she knew something. Not in the way you know facts, not in the way she knew the price of bread, or the name of the road through the forest. She knew it the way you know when someone is standing behind you before you turn around. The way you know, sometimes, that a thing that hurt you was also true. She was not the bridge. She had never been the bridge. She had been the destination all along. Her left hand, when she looked at it, had a mark on the palm. Silver, thin as a thread, the shape of something she did not have a name for. It had not been there before. She had not felt it arrive. She looked at it for a long time. Then she went to sleep on the floor. By morning, the palace had changed. Not the walls or the ceilings, or the long stone corridors. Those were exactly as they had been, but the wolves in those corridors were different. They moved around her differently, not with fear, not with reverence exactly, but with a kind of attention that they could not help, like a compass near a magnet, like a room tilting, very slightly, toward one point. The king's beta, a tall man named Ren, with gray at his temples, came around a corner and saw her in the hallway. He stopped walking. Something moved across his face that looked like confusion and recognition at the same time. Then, very slowly, without appearing to decide to do it, he went down on one knee. He stared at the floor. "I don't know why I did that," he said. "That's all right," Lena said. She kept walking. She heard him stand up behind her. She heard him stand there for a long time before his footsteps finally moved in the other direction. At the end of the corridor there was a window. She stopped in front of it and looked out at the courtyard below, where the early morning had turned the stone silver and cold. She could feel the whole building around her in a way she could not explain. Not sight, not sound. The way you feel a room is full before you open the door. The mark on her palm was warm. She did not hear him come up the stairs. Wolves are very quiet when they choose to be, and Calum, whatever else was true about him, was very old at being the kind of person a room rearranges itself around. She heard him only when he stopped a few feet behind her. She did not turn. "You should know," he said, "that the pack will not accept another queen." She watched the courtyard. "The moon goddess has made her choice," he said. "She made it before you arrived, perhaps long before that. I did not see it." A pause. "I was not looking." Lena thought about the crack in the marble floor, the thin line that ran from the doorway all the way to his throne, as if the floor had been recording the direction of something for a very long time and just waiting for her to follow it. She thought about her father's hand on the treaty paper. She thought about Mara at the gate, the hug that was also a goodbye. She thought about every open door she had walked through alone, and every open hand that no one had taken. She turned around. Calum was standing 3 feet away. Up close, he looked less like weather, and more like a man who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, and had recently been told he could put it down, but did not yet know how. His eyes were dark. They were looking at her the way they had not looked at her in the throne room, not like she was something to assess, like she was something he had been trying to find. "I rejected you in front of my entire court," he said. "I know what that cost you." "You don't," she said, "but that's fine." He did not look away. "I would like to." She looked at him. She looked at the high ceilings of the corridor. She looked at her left hand, at the silver mark that had arrived in the night without asking her permission, as if the universe had decided she was worth marking, even when no one else thought she was worth keeping. She thought, "I could leave. The carriage is waiting. I could go back to the village, to the bakery, to the small honest life that never asked very much of me, or gave very much back." She thought, "I have been not enough for so many people, for so long, that I stopped noticing I was the only constant." She thought, "I am tired. Not of him, not of this, of the particular exhaustion of living small to make other people comfortable." She opened her left hand between them. The mark caught the morning light through the window at the end of the hall. It was silver and quiet, and entirely certain about itself. "I'm not staying for the treaty," she said. He nodded. I'm not staying because I have nowhere else to go. I know. And I'm not staying, she said, because the moon goddess put a mark on my hand. He waited. She closed her fingers. I'm thinking, she said. He stood very still. The corridor held its breath. Somewhere far below them, the whole palace was doing the same thing. She could feel it. The held-in waiting of 100 wolves who all somehow knew that something important was happening in a hallway that wasn't even particularly beautiful. Black stone walls. One window. A crack in the floor that ended at his feet. She had always been good at taking her time. People had told her this, as a fault for most of her life. Too slow, too careful, too much time spent looking at things before she touched them. Mara used to say she was like someone reading the instructions for a door before opening it. Maybe. But she had also never opened a door she could not close again. She looked at him for a long time. He looked back. He did not rush her. She noticed this about him, for all the things he had done wrong, for all the words that had landed on her in that throne room like small stones thrown from a great height. He did not rush her now. He stood in the corridor, and he waited, and he let her decide. That was not nothing. She unfolded her hand. I'm staying, she said. And then, because it was important, because she wanted there to be no confusion, no story told later about a girl who had no choice, about a human bride who had nowhere else to go and nothing else to do, about a woman who said yes, because the moon said so. She said it again. I'm choosing to stay. He exhaled. It was a small sound. She suspected it was the smallest he had ever been in front of another person. Then I will spend a very long time, he said, making sure you don't regret it. You might not succeed, she said. No, he agreed, but I'll try. She thought about the crack in the marble floor, how it started at the door and ended at his throne, as if the building itself had known where she was going even on the first day, even when he looked away, even when she said, understood, and walked out. Some things know before you do. Some things have always been heading somewhere. She turned and walked beside him down the corridor, and neither of them said anything else, and the palace around them released the breath it had been holding since the night before, and somewhere in the deep northern forest, the trees grew a little straighter in the early light, and the crack in the throne room floor stayed exactly where it was. Because it had done its job. It had shown her the way.